Hi, it's Joy Foster, founder of TechPixies and the host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And I'm here today with our brand new Instagram coach, Emma Leatham. Thank you for being here with us. You were a TechPixie yourself, and the reins of Instagram coach have been handed over to you from the amazing Sophie Bradley. We're so grateful that you said yes. And I would just like you to, before we get into the Instagram trends for 2024, I'd just like you to tell everybody a little bit about how you came into TechPixies. We think it was like 2020, right around lockdown, and the impact that TechPixies has had on you and what you're doing now when you're not coaching at Instagram at TechPixies.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled to be here, Joy. Yeah, I can't believe where I've come. And sort of for anyone who's just joining TechPixies, it is a journey. Enjoy it and get involved and do the work, and you never know where it may take you. As you said, I joined you, I think it was 2020, just before we went into lockdown. I did the training. At the end of the training, that was when you were looking for someone to manage your Instagram. And obviously I had lots of ants, which your TechPixies will know about, but I thought, why not? Let's apply. So I applied for the role and landed the job. Worked with you and a couple of other clients. And it was in 2021, I then launched what I'm running now, Mightily Social. And I do client management. I also train people on how to use Instagram and Instagram best practices. I've got Fab Reels training this afternoon, which I'm really looking forward to. And it's been a great journey since joining TechPixies. And I feel very privileged to sit in this position. I didn't think I'd ever be here because Sophie was my Instagram coach, and she was a brilliant coach, and I loved learning from her. So I've got big Instagram shoes to fill.
You do, but we know you can do it. And in fact, Kirsty Raper is watching on Instagram Live, and she said, Emma is amazing, and she's right. So we are so grateful for the many years of service that Sophie Bradley gave the Instagram coach position at TechPixies. And we're always delighted to fill a coaching spot with an existing TechPixie, someone who went through the program, so that it shows people what's possible. So this is our Instagram Trends podcast. This is probably one of our most anticipated podcasts of the year. Let's talk about Instagram and the trends that you're seeing in 2024. Let's also talk about like what's working, what's not working. There have been some shifts and some changes with Instagram, and you've got some stats for us. So let's start there.
There's always changes on Instagram. But what I will say, whilst there are always changes, please don't get bogged down in these changes, because a lot of the changes don't affect your overall strategy. So try out the new things that come along, but don't worry about them. Yeah, I thought it'd be interesting just to start with a few stats for you, because some of these numbers just sort of blow my mind, really. There's currently 2 billion monthly active users, which is an awful lot of people out there to see your content, join your Instagram community, or buy from you. That's a lot of people. There's 500 million people who use it daily, and 70% of shoppers look to Instagram for their next purchase. So lots of people are coming there to buy things.
I've definitely been guilty of Instagram shopping.
Yeah, but it's a nice place to go and buy. It's a happy place to go and buy. However, there are over 200 million business accounts currently on Instagram. And that's not including the businesses that are actually set up as creator accounts. So there is a lot of competition if you're looking for your brand to stand out.
But it also means that where there's a lot of competition, it's worth being there.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's more important than ever that you've got a good strategy to ensure that what you are doing is really hitting the mark. And it's really important to find out what's working for you, your business, and your audience. Just because Joy's over here doing this, it doesn't mean that's the thing that's going to work for you and your business. And it was really interesting. I saw this weekend, Adam Mosseri was on he does these regular sort of Q&As on his stories. And someone asked him, someone said, oh, reach is down. Oh, it's awful. We're all having a terrible time. And he was saying, for some people it's up and some people is down. And this was what stuck around in my head. There's not enough reach to go around. So we really need to think about that strategy and the way we're using it. His advice were to experiment and figure out what your audience is most interested in. It's what you always say. It's what we always say. You have to do what works for you. And you have to be clear about why you're using Instagram. and be willing to try new things there. And also remember that your audience changes. So what's working right now may be different from what was working last year. So try, experiment, and check those insights. Please check those insights. Don't just guess. But in terms of what's working in 2024, there'll be no surprise to you that video content is still king. Yeah, video across the platforms, video is working well. So love them or loathe them, Reels are here to stay. So it's really worth leaning into video. And it's not just Reels. We're talking about your stories, talking about lives. There's lots of ways you can use video on Instagram. And 2023, they updated some of the editing tools for Reels, which now I think it's much easier to actually create your Reels in app. Because
using Instagram itself, so rather than creating it somewhere else. Yeah,
absolutely. Because prior to that, I was making a lot of my Reels in external editing tools, but now I do tend to use the app more. You know, what the editing tools have been updated. They've got templates for you to use. They're trying to make it easier and more user-friendly for you to create all your content within the app. And there was a recent announcement saying they're actually thinking about doing longer Reels because it's still only 90 seconds, or I've still only got 90 seconds. I know how they roll these things out. But if you are going to share longer form content, just be careful and be strategic, because you're wanting people to watch the content through to the end.
And that's actually a big argument for shorter content, because
absolutely.
If you can get someone to watch 20 seconds or 30 seconds, you know, the less time you can put it up there, the more engagement you get, the faster it gets out to people. So actually there's a big benefit to that. Like, we don't have to create long form content anymore. We can create short content.
It is brilliant. And Reels are great for that. Reels are brilliant. You know, you use a quality bit of footage, no grainy footage or blurred screens. Please clean your camera lens before filming.
I'm only laughing because our last few podcasts, we had to really zoom in order to crop quite a bit. And then we sort of knew, it's like, we're going to put this out into the world. We just know it's not going to do as well because people don't like to look at grainy content. So that's a really great tip. And we're actually putting together for ourselves a podcast guide as to how we want people to be framed within the picture, so that we don't have to cut them off.
And that is really important especially, I know a lot of tech pixies go on to sort of work in social media, be social media managers. When you're working with clients, be clear to them what you're expecting them to film or send to you, because it's very hard when you're sort of sent this footage and expected to create a reel, and you're sort of sitting there going, this is not going to work, but I'll give it my best shot.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I experimented with, which actually is the best reel we've had all year. And I don't, up until now, I've not been great at like creating sort of entertaining content, because it's out of my comfort zone, but we know entertaining content does very well on Reels. So I did do one, and it's done way, way, way better than anything else we've produced this year, almost double what we did. And it was me. I was cleaning my kitchen, and I set up a camera, and I just did a time-lapse video of me cleaning my kitchen. So I didn't even have to speed up the video. I just set it up as time-lapse.
Yeah.
Clean my kitchen. I noticed that there were lots of people doing that. Like, and I noticed I was watching them. And I thought, well, if I'm watching them, maybe someone is going to watch mine. So I did 3 different ones. We've only released one of the clips, but it was really fun to just see that I didn't have to do anything except for walk around my kitchen cleaning it. And that actually
did you add a good hook, some music, and a call to action within the content?
I did. And actually, because I had text across the top as I was cleaning the kitchen, and we'll link to it in the show notes so people can see it. And then what was interesting was I did have a call to action, which was to put a yes in the comments. And it actually was one of our highest comment producing posts as well. And it did really well. And again, it sort of surprised me. I just thought, who's going to care about me cleaning my kitchen?
You just mentioned another really interesting thing there is making it easy for people to respond to posts, because everyone sort of knows that, I've got to put a call to action in, but quite often you see this content and you ask a question here and then you tell them to do something else. You tell them to do something else. Actually, just saying reply yes to this comment. It's quick and easy, and it's simple for people to reply. And then when you've got that engagement on your content, the algorithm's going to show it to more people, and so more people will see it, and it increases your visibility. I picked up on something else you said about that specific reel. So interestingly, the Hootsuite report, social media trends, they do a trends report each year. And they said the top reason people are using social media at the moment is to be entertained and mentally unwind. And that's where reels, again, are brilliant because, yeah, I was going to say, I
do. I let myself have like 5 minutes, 10, because the reels are so short now. They're like 30 seconds or less. I mean, they're like, some of them are even like 15 seconds because they loop, and actually they want the looping happening. But what I think is so much fun is I use it for exactly that. In fact, that's why, I mean, I already admitted on the TikTok podcast that I'm not a huge fan of the TikTok stuff because it's just so like, it just hits me the wrong way. But if I go watch Instagram reels or Facebook reels, I get like that little feel good, you know, I see someone else creating something that they love or living a life that they love. Like one of them was someone was waking up to the sunrise, and I just loved looking at the sunrise, you know, with them.
It's an amazing, people love to watch and love to see though. And actually a lot of that sort of, you were talking about clean your kitchen, that behind the scenes stuff, you know, even if it's just you at your desk, or the ones I love seeing people making their products and, you know, showing how things are made. They are really popular right now. Also, it lets people get to know you. So you're building that connection with your audience because they can see your face, they can see how you work. And I mentioned this actually in my post on Instagram today, by showing the craftsmanship and the time that's taken to make a product, therefore it increases the value in your customer's mind. And so they can see what's going into it.
So when we've done trends in the past, I mean, obviously we've done this every year, I think now for 3 or 4 years. And it's been interesting to see what changes over time. Obviously reels are here to stay and they're very important. You need to build them in. But when I did the trends with Sophie last year, she was saying it's also about mixing it up and not always doing reels. So is that still the case?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's interesting that just because they're still getting great reach for your reels and bringing people into community doesn't mean you should ignore the other types of content. And actually, and this will be interesting to see how it plays out. They've been testing carousel posts within the reels feed. I don't know if you've seen that.
No,
it's not launched yet, but they've been testing it. But carousels are brilliant, and carousels for some people are doing really well. You know, especially if you're sharing sort of tips or how-tos, because people like to scroll through. And if you, again, like the reels, if you can get people scrolling to the end of your carousel, spending time on your content, it's then going to increase your reach on that post.
I'm a big fan of carousels, and I like to use carousels almost as mini blog posts. Where you've got the story to share, and then the pictures and the video are telling that story. Because you can in a carousel, you can have video and static images.
Yeah, absolutely. There was an interesting trend lately where sort of, and I think it's more coming from the creators, where it's called the photo dump trend, where they're just sort of sharing a carousel of sort of that more behind the scenes candid sort of images of what's going on. But again, that's quite good for telling a story and sharing more about you.
We have a lot of people who are social media managers. Obviously, they've come through our program, like you. They've come through our program. They've become social media managers, consultants, coaches, etc. You've worked really hard on your account, and it looks really beautiful. And we'll share it in the show notes so people can see what you're doing. But you know, what I see a lot of social media managers, consultants, coaches doing is sharing a lot of tips, etc. Is that your strategy, or what would you say is working right now for getting clients in that sort of realm?
So interesting. Another thing I've read is Instagram at the moment, you should be adding value, not selling. It was something like 62% of people that are on Instagram if they see selling, they are put off immediately and walk away. So the thing that is working is by adding value. Is that entertaining, educating, and inspiring content. So by sharing content like that, your audience are going to connect with you further. And one of the things that we should be prioritizing in 2024 is really thinking about that audience and that community. Prioritize building connections, building your community over trying to sell to them. Because if you do that, you will sell.
Totally. In fact, I mean, TechPixies has that philosophy. We don't sell at all on our social media. What we do is we invite people to our boot camps. Well, really, the main thing we use our paid advertising for is to invite people to boot camps. But our organic social media strategy is very much about connecting with the community. It's about elevating profiles of people within our community. It's about sharing their stories. It's also about, update, letting people know what we're up to if we're going to an event or engaging with. So I think it's really interesting. I agree with that. I don't think I say in the Social Media Superhero Bootcamp that the sales are in the mails. You're selling.
No, I know you do. I picked up on that actually, because I think that, there's been quite a few updates to the DMs lately. What with, broadcast channels launched last year, and it's for creators at the moment, not for business accounts, but it's about bringing together a community where it's like the most loyal fans will come into your DMs and you can give them updates or sort of unique content that everyone else on Instagram won't necessarily see. And for Instagram, you say sales in the mails, it's stories and DMs is where you're going to do any selling if it happens, if you don't take them into your mailing lists and things.
That's interesting. So and that is very true. So there are people that are doing all of their selling through the DMs, through stories, and not actually even using an email system. Although I still recommend highly having an email system. Because it's amazing, because sometimes Instagram goes down, and I can't imagine last week Instagram and Facebook both went down, and sort of think, well, the reality is that if all of your contacts are sitting on a channel that you no longer can use, it makes it really difficult. The other thing too, we stopped using X / Twitter because it just was not serving us. When we looked at all of the data, it wasn't working for us. We weren't enjoying doing it. And, so if we were relying on that completely and then suddenly decided to stop using it, we would, having to extract all that data or all those contacts is almost impossible. So I do think your strategy has to be a bit joint. But then, of course, once someone's bought from you through a DM, through a story, then they're on your mailing list because you got to send them information about the stuff that they've bought. So
absolutely. And I was going to mention the whole Insta crash last week. Because yes, you should definitely have an overarching strategy and not just relying on one platform. But the other thing to do is just make sure you save your content. For example, I draft all my, copy, and I draft the reels, but I always save your reels, because then your carousel posts and all your content, because then you can repurpose it. And if the platform was to crash and die, at least you then have a copy of it all. It's not just lost forever. So
yes, and that's one thing we really encourage in social management certification is you pre-plan it, you pre-schedule it, and I love that you have all of that. And actually, one of the questions that's coming up for me to ask you, which I think is such a great one, because there are people in the Tech Pixie journey who maybe in the boot camp, or maybe who are just starting with us, or who would just love listening to this podcast, who are at the very beginning of their Instagram journey. Can you remember going back, like way back when you were just getting started out? Because you've been doing this for such a long time. What's your advice to someone just getting started out? Because they might look at all this stuff and be so overwhelmed and feel like there's just no way I'm going to be able to do this. What do you?
My top advice is to do the things. So try all the things and make all the mistakes, because it doesn't matter. But if you don't do it, if you don't test and try, you'll never learn or build the confidence. So you do all the things that scare you. Show up live, show up on your stories and connect with people, but just try the things out and figure out what's going to work for you and your business, if it's a business that you're using the platform for.
Well, I'm going to share your screen. Now, I know if you're listening to the podcast, we're going to have to describe this for you. But I'm going to share Emma's account, because I just want to point out some of the awesome things that she's doing with her account. But also, if I think it's fun to sort of show what's going on with this account or with accounts. And so let's just talk about it. If someone's listening, I highly recommend you watch our podcast, because you'll get more value out of it. But you've got, first of all, you've got a picture of yourself. You've got your company name. You've also got your full name. On your account, a lot of people don't do that, and it really bothers me. So I think that's really important.
I always recommend, if you're a business, because I'm terrible with names, but I'm more likely to remember your name than necessarily your business name. This has happened to me multiple times, where I've met someone, I'm interested in their business, and I can only remember their name. And if your name is in there, that line where you are now is searchable. So people can find you. So you really should have your name. And my other point I wanted to talk about today was SEO and keywords. You need to have keywords in there. Think about, what are your audience searching for to find you or people like you?
Yeah, and then I love that you've got, of course, we love stars. I love that you've got stars in your bio. So what Emma has is 4 stars that are like bullet points, and she said she does Insta tips and creative content ideas to grow your business. So you say what you're going to do on your account.
Yeah.
You say that you do account management, you do one-on-one and group workshops, and then you say sign up to my newsletter, and that goes right into your newsletter.
Hands up there. There will be a lead magnet there soon. But for now, I just wanted to get it up there because this is quite a new thing for me because it's been on the to-do list for so long. And I just one day just went, I'm just going to do it. And that is another tip to anyone just starting out. Quite often, in order to do things, you know what, just do it. Just try it. Because I'm very good at putting things to the bottom of my to-do list, as I'm sure lots of us are.
Well, and then you've also got really good branding colors that are rotating through. You've got this sort of a navy blue, this sort of peach, and then this sort of light blue, and you're rotating through a color scheme, which I love. And then you see that color scheme build itself all the way through your content, which I just think is so brilliant. And you just do that so well. And you've got fonts that you're using that are staying consistent and going all the way through. You've got some fun content. I love that. You've got a mix of reels as well, which is really important.
Yeah, I do like to use a mix of content as I said before, the carousels work really nicely for tips, as do reels. And if you are starting out, and if you have, say, because some people already have a business and they're just starting to use Instagram to promote it, if you've got sort of a logo or brand colors that you can use them on your Instagram, because if you're sticking with your branding, it makes your posts and your content recognizable to people before they even notice that it's from you.
Yeah, and I love as well that you're using the pinning up at the top. So these are going to be some of your most successful posts. And I love what you've got here. So you've got an introduction to yourself.
Yeah.
And then a work with you post. And then you've got another post of you actually doing work.
So like the highlights, these pin posts are really valuable space on your account. And I always advise that you have an introductory post. You let people know how they can work with you. And actually, I'm updating that this week. So a new one is going up and changing it from a reel for a carousel to see how that affects things. And then, pin a post that's worked really well for you, something that's done really well. And whether it's a tip or that was me running a workshop, and I quite enjoyed that, as you can tell. But it's really valuable space. So please use your pin posts and rotate them in the same way that I'd encourage you to update your bio regularly. If there's different things going on with your business, different events, use that space on your account to promote these things. Say if you had a boot camp running, you'd probably change that last call to action line to here's all the info about the boot camp. You'd also change your pin post to say similar thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's great, and we'll link to your account in the show notes so people can go and have a peruse and look at what you've done. And you have been able to successfully build your business using Instagram. So your clients and your workshops and everything have been able to be filled through your Instagram account.
It has all come through Instagram. Yes, I am starting my mail list, but up to date, it has all been through Instagram. And that again goes back to what I was saying about building communities. It's because I built a community. Oh, and there was another point about that. I didn't say in my story, in my journey, somewhere in there I had a baby as well. And so I took a year off, and I purposely took a year off, and I decided I'm not going to post on Instagram. I'm going to just take this time because you don't get it back. But before I started posting again, before I went back to work, and it was September last year, I started using the app again. I started engaging. I started connecting. I started supporting other people. And that meant that when I returned to work in that September, I set the ground running. I had bookings from the off just because as soon as people saw I was back and sharing content, like, oh yes, no, now I'm back. Yes, exactly.
You're back. We want you back. Well, this is what that just gave me chills when you were talking about it, because one of the things that we say is that these skills are going to be wonderful skills for you if you've been out of work and you want to go back to work. I love that you use these skills. You set yourself up, and then you're like, I'm going to have another baby. You took time out, and then you went back in using these skills. There was like you can do it part-time flexibly around your baby.
Yeah, and that's another reminder as well, is people get so caught up in, I must create content, I must get this out. And do as much content as you possibly can. That is brilliant. But do not forget that actually engaging, connecting with your audience is just as important. You know, if you can only manage to spend X amount of time a week on the app and creating content, I'd suggest you create a little less content and put a bit more time into that engagement.
Yeah, you got to do both. You can't just post. You've got to engage, and you got to engage with your community. And that I always do that. I never go onto Instagram without, if I go onto Instagram to reply to comments, I always, always, always check everybody else's stuff. I comment, I put some emojis, I drop, just so that they know you're thinking about them for sure.
And they know as a real person behind the account. With all this sort of growth of bots and automation, it's nice to show that you're a real person. And it's one of our superpowers, being smaller businesses over the big brands, is that we can show up, we can show ourselves, we can connect with our audiences.
Actually, that reminds me, I watched a reel with Taylor Swift the other day. She was being interviewed, and they said, "Is your life normal at all?" And she's like, "No, it's not normal at all." And she goes, "But you still," and it was, I think it might've been Diane Sawyer who was interviewing her. And she said, "But you still like reply to people on Instagram and on social media." And she goes, "Yes, because that's the only way I feel normal. Like if I get to see that, and I think she said like Emma from Philadelphia is having got home from school and had a great day at school. I get to connect with her and I have like, there's an element of reality to her life that I love." And so it's interesting, for someone like Taylor Swift who like has millions and millions of people following her, she's using social media in many ways to keep herself grounded and connected to people, in that way.
I listened to a podcast recently, and the end of it was "Be More Taylor Swift," just because she is doing so well and out there, but she still takes that time to connect with her audience for whatever reason it is. But people value that.
Yeah, I love it. Be more Taylor Swift. I think that's a great way to finish this podcast. Well, I'm so grateful you have come in and stepped in to be our Instagram coach. You're going to be a great coach. We know you're already a great coach, which is why we asked you to come on board. Thank you for doing this podcast on the trends. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Joy.
All right. So we will make sure that there is information in our show notes about how to connect with Emma. And of course, anyone who wants to know more about Instagram is just one piece of the puzzle, guys. We've got to do more than one network. You don't have to be on all the networks, but you want to be on more than one network. So whether that's Instagram and Facebook, or Instagram and YouTube, or Instagram and TikTok, whatever it is, the key is that you are stacking your social media, that you're at least on 2 networks, and that you've got a strategy for that. And we teach that in our social media management certification program. And of course, if you want to know more information about our social media management certification, join our bootcamp, techpixies.com/bootcamp. Email us at support@techpixies.com. And you get coached by amazing, amazing coaches like Emma in our program. So if you're not in our program, why not? Right. And if you are, I'm glad you're listening. Thank you for fully participating. We had a couple live guests. I want to acknowledge them. Kelly Austin says, "Thank you so much, Emma." And Claire Louise says, "Thank you, Emma. This has been really great." And of course, Claudia Murray, thumbs up to Taylor Swift. So love you all. See you around the socials, and we'll talk soon. Thanks. Bye for now.